everyone. Welcome to another Alkebulan Awakening series. My name is Oladile Dosunmu. I'm the co-founder of Emerging Alkebulan, and we're about transforming our minds, decolonizing our minds, and awakening the consciousness of our African people. I'll let Nduku go.
Habari gani, karibuni, asanteni. Thank you all for being here. I am Nduku Mulumba, the host of Kumbukeni, where we are reclaiming our narrative and countering the false narrative that Western media has told for way too long about us and our motherland.
Okay, and our special guest today, I'll let him introduce himself, and Elder Chester Higgins is going to introduce himself. He's going to introduce the topic, and he's going to do a presentation for us. And once we've done that, if you've got any questions, as usual, just put them on the chat and we'll deal with it as soon as we've done the presentation. So my elder Chester Higgins, if you want to introduce yourself. And
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My name is Chester Higgins. I'm a photographer. I went to a school called Tuskegee in Alabama, and I had a teacher whose name was P.H. Polk, who was very much a race man, and Tuskegee was as well. And he used his camera to confront the negative stereotypes of Black people, which led me to come to refine my skills with the same mission, to redefine the visual document as it relates to people of color. It wasn't necessary for me to go out and photograph negative images of Black people because that was done already. But it was necessary to show a different side, a side that shows the three things that are always missing when you look at pictures of us made by outsiders. And those three issues of decency, dignity, and moral character. It's just something that's under the radar that our enemies just can't see. They've never been encouraged to see. And I say to people that slavery and colonization is not our history. It's an interruption of our history. But how do you answer that? That's a provocative statement. And how do we answer that? Well, it took me decades to produce a document that can answer that. And this started in 1973. In 1973, I must have been 26 years old. And I went to the Blue Nile. In May, I had been living in Ghana for 2 summers, the summer of 72 and 73, and Senegal, the summer of 74. I heard about the African Organization of African Unity. Well, all of these leaders come together in different, each year in a different country, different venue site. So that 73, forgive my cold, in 73, the meeting, the 10th anniversary meeting was taking place in Addis Ababa. So I pulled my pennies together and I went to Addis Ababa for a week. I joined the press corps, and there I made pictures of African heads of state. And I was really impressed with Haile Selassie, and I was impressed with Ethiopia as a country, with its history and its culture. And then a few months later, after May, I found myself in Egypt in September of 73, on the other end of the Nile. And there I was overwhelmed in awe of the remains of our people left behind in the ruins of the pyramids, the ruins of the temples, the ruins of the tombs. All of it has been desecrated. But even in this desecration, even what we're looking at is essentially the skeleton. It's so awesome what our people did and left behind. And it made me wonder, wow, here was something that I never considered, I never thought about, because I had been raised a Christian. Little did I know the Christian Bible was an instrument of control and pacification, not an instrument of historical accuracy. Because in the Bible, it tells me how bad the Egyptian people are, how bad the Pharaoh is. And here I'm looking on the walls of the tombs and the temples where the pharaohs are in ceremony. They're in religious ceremony. And their ceremony is where they're using priests, they use purification. They have the Holy Family, which in the Bible we're told the Holy Family is the father and the son, and the mother vanished like a ghost. So I began to start studying this, and I'm studying two cultures at the same time for the next 50 years. I'm studying Ethiopian Orthodox culture, Ethiopian that led to then the Ethiopian Islamic culture, that finally led to the Ethiopian culture of those who worship nature. And then in the Egyptian, I'm studying trying to figure out what the belief system is here and how it's expressed. And then I come to realize that in the writings of the Egyptians, I see the evidence of the Ten Commandments. The Egyptians call them the 42 negative confessions. So the Greeks, and then I study more and I realize that it's the Greeks who started out as the students of the Egyptians. Later on, when the Egyptians got them on their feet, they became the enemies of the Egyptians. And Egypt had many enemies, understandably so. If you're the richest country in the world, you will have a lot of people who want what you got. So you had the Persians attacking, the Assyrians attacking, the Hyksos attacking, the Sea People attacking, and the Greeks. And the Greeks, after they attacked under Alexander, I say Alexander the Great, grudgingly, you had a 250-year occupation of Egypt by the Greeks, who essentially then created an apartheid system that the African people were then confined away from their temples in smaller areas, and the Greek took control of the place. Up until that time, all of the legal documents were written by the priests in the Meteor. The Greeks changed it and said you had to get it written by Greeks. So gradually, they changed the administration of the country, and they had no religion. Nowhere in Europe did you find an early expression of religion before the contact with Africa. And in their effort to try to make a religion, they did something that was very much them, but very much not African, because their religious texts have people acting completely immoral with each other. That's not the situation in African religion. And so I tell people that and it's not easy for people to wrap their heads around this, is that conceptually, Africa invented theology, because all of the theological things that were transferred into the Bible have their antecedents in the Egyptian faith. Now, it took me a long time to understand that, because I started off in West Africa. And West African religion, after you get underneath the missionaries and the well, what do they call them, charismatics, you then begin to look at different expressions of the Yoruba or nature-based African religions. And they all have different names and different expressions, and different African American communities and Brazilian communities have been attracted to different ones. But because they are speaking different languages, which caused them to change their names, we Americans who speak no other language than American, not even English, found it too hard to navigate through it. But what I found out as I kept studying Egyptian religion, I realized that the Egyptian religion was the overall tapestry. And that during that time, people made pilgrimages all over Africa, from Africa to Egypt. And when the pilgrims went back out to their respective countries, they took with them the structure, the foundational structure of the Egyptian belief, and all they did is just change names into their languages. But you can see that if you understand Egyptian religion first, you can see the different pieces of this tapestry that has been transported. But it's a lot clearer than if you try to go the other way. So I look at 1973, and I'm amazed at what I'm seeing. After I get over the pyramid, which is 350 feet high. Not until the Eiffel Tower was built was there anything taller than a pyramid. And I tell people, if you go into a building and you're on the 35th floor, go out and look out the window, because that's your view. I've climbed the pyramid several times, and that was a view. It's a great view from the top of the pyramid. So I started looking and learning about Egyptology, and I ran into a few things right away. I ran into fundamentally this dissonance that white Egyptologists have about the Africanness of Egypt, the African patrimony of Egypt. Because of their racism, they find this a very hard thing to wrap their heads around. And it wasn't until the 80s that the first museum in the world, the Brooklyn Museum, with a curator by the name of Romano, who put up a show on ancient Egypt, localizing it in Africa. He didn't change all the white Egyptologists. They look at it and you understand it. Egypt is the epitome of civilization. Everybody wants to be an ancient Egyptian. Everybody. And, people forget that God didn't get white until the Pope of the Vatican had Leonardo paint him white.
Oops.
So, and that was, to make the people emotionally bond with it, with the concept that is alien to them. And they're just not in their DNA to be peaceful. They're just not to say that all people, we humans are cantankerous by nature. And I think that as I study more, I feel that the whole idea of the ancient Egyptian priesthood was, as they say, trying to replicate the perfection in heaven. But also, you cannot make a society without peace. Finding a way that there are common bridges that people can believe in and expectations that they all can accept. That's the role of religion, as the Egyptians, from what I can tell, the Egyptians put together. And that's the role that the Greeks tried to play, but they added another spice to it. They added the spice of being controlling the crowd. So if you tell them what to think, and you can add stuff in it. And that's why in our Bible, we have 52 passages that approve slavery, that says you should honor your slave master, you should not rebel against him. What does that have to do with religion? What does that have to do with spirituality? Absolutely nothing. But it shows you how it's been politically used, and so much so that the English were very upfront about it. During the English conquest of the colonies, they made a Bible that they called the Slave Bible. And in that's the King James Version. So that King James Version that our people go around and talk about the Word of God was actually edited by 8 Englishmen, approved by King James as the text to distribute throughout the colonies. So all of these things we just don't know about, and people are afraid to know about them because there is a big reason. One is that we African people are very spiritual by nature. You go to a white church and it's very sanitized. You go to a black church and it's very emotional. It's very touchy-feely.
Yep.
So we black people who are in touch were the first people to develop a vocabulary to deal with the spiritual nature of the universe. We are sensitive to messages that somehow acknowledge this existence, this parallel existence of spirituality and a God form, creator form. So because we are sensitive, we're open to that. That made it easier for, and the fact that the Egyptians understood it and developed a whole theology around it, it made it attractive and easy for our oppressors to take that and add a little more poison to it before they gave it to us.
Wow.
You have to think, the enslavers never gave us good education, never gave us good food, never gave us good clothes. Why would you think they give us good religion? So let me show you some of what I've discovered in my work, because in Sacred Nile, I had to figure out, we were talking about a time period of 7,000 years. This is a photograph I made on my trip in September 1973 of the Theban Mountains in Luxor, of the sun setting. Now, for those of you who know hieroglyphs, you understand that this means a border to a foreign country, but that's just how it worked out. As I try to put in stuff as I go along. Then here I'm looking, because the book Sacred Nile, there's nothing, what is it they say about Jerusalem, the place of the peace, Holy Land? Fuck Jerusalem. It's not a holy land. It's not a place. The Holy Land always had been the Nile River. That's where religion was developed and traveled. The religion of spirituality, in being in touch with nature. You don't need to go and read anything to be in touch with nature. You have to go and read something to be in touch with religion. And if you don't know anything about religion, then all of the precepts of religion do not apply to you. It's only when you study and learn it that you become captive and become a prisoner of it. So here, the pyramids in Sudan, we discovered, the Nubian pyramids, there are about 200 pyramids in Sudan. There's almost 100 in Egypt. There's a big difference. The Egyptian pyramids are much taller. These pyramids here may be 10, 12 stories high, not 35 stories high. The Egyptian pyramids are built on a 45-degree slant. The Nubian pyramids are built on a 90-degree slant. The Egyptian pyramids have interior rooms. The Nubian pyramids do not. And the tombs of the Nubian pyramids are built underneath the pyramid, and then the pyramid is built on top of it. So here, I discovered, you see these in the temples throughout Egypt, but I didn't know. It took me time to learn what I was looking at. The Holy Family. In the ancient Egyptian, the woman had equal par divinity to the man.
Yes.
And you cannot have a family without a mother. So here you have the mother on the left, and you have on the right the creator and their son behind him. Now, the Egyptians believe in a concept called Nut, N-U-T. Everybody, please Google that word, N-U-T, Egyptian, and you'll find out that that is the creator goddess of ancient Egypt. So the creator was not a man, it was a woman. Just like nature. They've changed it up.
Wow.
That men, Adam, what kind of foolishness is this with Adam giving birth out of his rib? When that's not how nature has ever been. So in the Egyptian belief system, Nut, and there are pictures of it. I didn't show it in this book, but if you go and Google it, you'll see it. Nut is the body of a lean black woman arching over the planet Earth in a downward dog position. Her feet are on the east, and her arms are extended to the west. So the Egyptians say everything has to be balanced. There's day and there's night. There's warm and there's cold. There's firm footing, earth, and then there's unfirm footing, water. Everything is a match. Everything is a balance. So Nut represented to the Egyptians, or the Kemet used, continuity. And why do I say that? Because it represented when her arms are stretched to the west, and she's on, I must say, she's stretching across the globe, not on the magnetic poles, but on the solar poles. The direction that the sun rises and sets is the solar poles. So we all know the sun rises in the east and it sets in the west. So her arms and her hands extend to the west. So when the tired sun sets, her arms become a runway that the sun uses to go and be swallowed by her. And why is it swallowed? Because it is inside of her. that as the batteries of the sun is recharged. And as the sun passes through the black of space, black matter, it's recharged. And because she wears a dress that has holes in it, it twinkles. And that's how we get the stars. And then in the morning, because her feet, her vagina and her feet are placed on the eastern horizon, she gives birth to the sun. And the sunrise comes and then animates everything in existence. But there's something very important that happens. There's a catalytic agent that happens in this birthing. And that catalytic agent, the Egyptians call their one God, and you may have heard this word before, is spelled A-M-E-N.
E-N. Amen.
Amen. So when the Greeks read the Bible, they couldn't take out sun, the worship of the sun, so they have Sunday, and they couldn't take out Amen because the people were too. They were been raised on this. They knew that that was legitimate, and it's interesting because when you say the word Amen, no matter whatever word you say in theology, none of it has the certainty and the comfort of the word Amen. That is the name of the Egyptian god. They only had one. Now, our white brethren will try to tell you, well, oh, they have many gods. They're polygamous or they're animus. All those negative words that the Christians use to denigrate us. No. They had managers. If you have a company, and then we think of the universe as a enterprise, there's a lot of different things happening. All of nature, all of the elements have their own individual representation. So if I want to affect wind, then I want to deal with Shu. If I want to affect gravity, then I want to deal with, Seb, Heb. So all of these different things are the Egyptians' way of appreciating that there is a force in everything that is natural, and being able to identify that force then allows you some specification in how you deal with it. So now, going from the Holy Family, which is on the walls of all the temple, this is what Egypt looks like. This is what Egypt has always looked like since the beginning of time. The Nile River is what gives life to the desert. There's no way to bring water into the desert overland. The only water you have is just a water that comes out of the White Nile, which begins on the border of Congo and Rwanda, and goes through Lake Victoria, the river states, and then the water that comes out of Ethiopia. That water becomes a superhighway to get out of the interior of Africa into Egypt. Only that water. That water allows you to be able to migrate down the river. You can walk along the river, you have a boat, you can ride along the river, but that is the superhighway of ancient times. And it's still a very important highway as today. And because of that river, you have a ribbon of green in the desert. That ribbon now can stretch out to be, in some places, a mile, but during the inundation period, that river could be as much as 10 miles when it floods. So, something else is important about that. Where does the Nile come from? Well, the Greek thought that it came from some mountain of snow because that's their understanding, that in Europe they have mountains of snow. They didn't realize that it came from the waters of Ethiopia. Now, there are two rivers, the white and the blue. I don't know why they have that, why the English explorers named them white and blue. But in Ethiopia, 90% of the water that reaches the Mediterranean that goes down to Egypt comes out of Ethiopia. That's why now Ethiopia has built a dam on the Nile, to the dismay of the Egyptians, because the Egyptians wanted to claim this is their water, because for thousands of years this water has been free. And the Ethiopians decided that no, this is our water, and we're going to use it to benefit us. We're going to build a dam on it. And the Egyptians hollered and said we're going to go to war. They never did. But what the Egyptians really are concerned about, two things. First of all, You must realize that it is fair game anywhere in the world to hate black people, which means that I'm not quite sure who hates us more, the Arabs or the white people. But
Wow.
the Arabs don't like the idea that black people will have any sort of say or control over their lives, which this dam puts in place. But they have another existential fear. And that fear is that if this water belongs to Ethiopia, and if Ethiopia is in control of shutting this water off and letting it pass, how long would it take for Ethiopia to put a water meter on that water? So their biggest fear is one day they're going to have to start paying Ethiopia, because Ethiopia is going to start charging them per cubic yard for the water that they're now been getting free. Here you have there are many different rivers in Ethiopia, and that's why the priests call it the land of Eden, that feed into the Nile. Here's another one that empties out near Khartoum, of young people with the sun going down. I'm very much in this book, I'm looking at two things. I'm looking at the territory, the geography, as well as the belief system, and how these things fit into each other like two spoons. For those of you who may not know, ancient Egypt, in any museum in the world, the credibility of that museum is determined by how much ancient Egyptian artwork they have. Let me say that again.
Wow.
The credibility of any museum, major museum in the world, is predicated on how much ancient Egyptian art they have. That's an acknowledgement that there's no art that's in greater.
Wow.
Not only for craftsmanship, but from just what it looks like and what it says. Now, here you have, discovered over 100 years ago, the intact tomb of King Tut, King Tutankhamun. Now, this is a bust of King Tut, and this shows you that the King Tut was a black man. Up until this point, white restorers would find statues of Egyptians, and they would restore them, which means they will scrape off all the black. And that's how we get all of these white statues of ancient Egypt. Unless the stone is black, they would then scrape off the color. And the color they'll be left with, only a clean piece of statuette, will be white looking.
Wow.
So in my next book, I will probably use my pictures, which will all be on the ancient Egypt. I'll probably use AI to restore color.
Wow.
So because we know what the color really looks like. Now, people will say to you that, the white people will very quickly try to throw bullshit in your face. We have a saying down south, don't piss in my eye and tell me it's rain, because I know the difference. And what they will say is that, well, Egypt was multicultural. And then unless you know the history of Egypt, you're kind of stuck. But what they're talking about is, Egypt is imperious. A 7,000-year-old culture is in different periods. Yes, in the last periods after the indigenous were defeated, you had the conquerors who came in. And those conquerors did look Roman and Greek and Persian. That's multicultural. But the foundation of the culture itself that lasted for 7,000 years before you got to that point was African. So unless you know how to say that to people, they will run that bullshit to you. So here I have translations. I wanted to use the Egyptian language. I wanted their voices to be heard in the pronunciation of their words and the meaning. And so I dedicate a couple pages to that, to the most important things. And so here we start. This is where the Blue Nile starts in Ethiopia, 6,000 feet above sea level. In the mountains and this is the Blue Nile River Falls, which the Ethiopians call Tisisat, which because it's so noisy, you hear it when you're hiking there. You hear it long before you see it. But this is where the Blue Nile starts, and you see that reddish in it. That's that dirt. That's that clay that's going down. That's full of fertilizer. And then, as I began to study Egyptology more, I realized that the sky was very important to them. They were essentially a culture of astronomers. And they got their information from the sky, and they got their understanding of humanity from the sky, and they got their understanding of being a part of. We're all a part of this one great ecosystem, and they saw the Nile as a reflection of the Nile in the sky. And for them, the Nile in the sky was the Milky Way. So I had to, at one point, I had to start studying astrophotography. So I had to study where things were in the sky. And then I had to also study, 16 years I did yoga to get being fit for mountain climbing. Because the best views in Ethiopia for seeing the Milky Way were this picture here is 7,400 feet above sea level. Another picture in the book is 8,600 feet. So I had to learn how to mountain climb, get a crew, get ropes to rappelling, all of that stuff. Now on the right, you see bones. These are very important bones. This is the bone of our most ancient ancestor. White people call her Lucy. Ethiopians call her Denkwanesh, which means you are a wonder. This is the fossilized bones of Denkwanesh that's 3.5 million years old.
Wow.
So on the left, here's a map that shows you where I'm talking about. Here's the Blue Nile, starts in Ethiopia, 6,000 feet, and it falls down the Nile Trench, down hundreds of miles, down into Khartoum, and continues to Cairo, and continues to the Mediterranean. And this is one of the tributaries that around Gondar that feeds into Lake Tana, which then produces the Nile River Falls. So for all of my white and black friends who have a problem knowing what I have a problem since being a Boy Scout. I have a problem with people who can't read maps. So I decided to make sure there was a good map here so that everybody could read it. And as you can see that on the African continent, there is this area that we call ancient Egypt, which is across from the Saudi Peninsula, which one day the Israelis want to take over. And here you see temples on the left, you see temples in Sudan. And you see this particular temple is a temple of a female queen. In Sudan, Nubia, you had many female queens. In fact, they had a term for them, Kendaki, which meant female ruler. And this is the back of one of those temples, the Temple of the Lion at Patamak. And across from that is a temple built by Tutankhamun's grandfather, Tutmosis the third, in Luxor. This is from the Sun Court. Here on the left, you see the highlands of Ethiopia. All these mountains you're looking at are anywhere from 6,000 to 12,000 feet. And this is, I'm up. When I go to Ethiopia, when I go to Egypt, I usually go for 6 weeks at a time so that I can rent a car and a driver and leisurely make my way across the country looking for the things I'm looking for. And on one of my journeys, I came across this image, and that really shows for people what the highlands of Ethiopia and the vastness of Ethiopia, what it looks like. And on the right, you see in Cairo, out from Cairo, at Giza, you see the Pyramid of Khufu at sunrise. On the left in Ethiopia, you see ceremonies to the river. And on the right, Simeon Mountains, the range of the Simeon Mountain, the 15,000. And then on the left, you see a moonrise in Ethiopia. You see the Sphinx against the pyramid in Giza. And here you see, this looks like a Sphinx itself from the side. This is a temple, a sun temple in Sudan. The Blue Nile Falls, horning going on the mountains all the way on its way to Egypt. The pyramids in Sudan, the Acropolis. Okay, these are the churches on the left in Ethiopia that are dug out of the mountain rock. The 13th century. This is 100 years before the Pope issued the Declaration of Discovery, because all the white tribes in Europe were fighting and killing each other. And the Pope says, hey, let me find another place that you guys can fight over. So he made the Declaration of Discovery. And that Declaration of Discovery is that wherever you go, and there's no Christians there, you can take it. You have my authority, you can take it. And so that's how all of these explorers left Europe. They left Europe to try to find the new lands because they had been given authority by the Pope that wherever they go, and if there were not Christians there, then it belonged to them. It belongs to the Pope. They can take it in the name of the Pope. So here's a night scene of this church, because in Ethiopia, church starts at like 4:30 in the morning. It's dark. Sunrise, church ends, which is the old Egyptian calendar as well. And there's one fragment that I'll remind you of. If you remember the time when Jesus was approached by the Roman guards when he was in Jerusalem and he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and his disciples will say, oh, nobody's going to touch you, blah, blah, blah. And he says to one, before the cock crows thrice, you would have denied me twice. Now, what does that mean? If any of us live on a farm, the rooster does not wait for the sun to come up to start crowing. The rooster starts at the first faint light in the sky. And then gradually it gets lighter. So it also says that this time in the morning, temple was happening before sunrise.
Chester, real quick, would you like to take a glass of water? We can pause for you to take a glass of water.
I'll take a coffee.
All right, good. Thank you.
So the same daily calendar of the Egyptians upholding temple before the sunrise. And why they do that? You have to remember they are agrarian people, they are farmers. They could not afford to waste time for their plants to be growing and not be there to pay attention to them. So they will wake up before sunrise, and when the sun comes, it then gives them the acknowledgement that they have been blessed with another day, and they head right out to go take care of their fields. The same thing it continues with the Ethiopians. And on the right, you have a Kandake. You have on the pyramid wall of a queen in ancient Nubia, and this is her sitting on her throne. This is a boat made out of papyrus. The Ethiopians call it the tankwa. Now, why is this boat important? Because they need it. The fishermen use it. And you probably heard the biblical story of Moses being put in a boat made of reeds. This is what that boat was made of. Papyrus grows all along the Nile. Out of the papyrus, you can form it into a vessel. And in that vessel, you can then write it. And that's what was happening with Moses. Now, here's a very interesting thing about the theology. On the left, you see people praying, kneeling, and putting their head to the floor. In the middle, you see Hebrews praying, standing up, reading the Torah. And on the right, you see Muslims praying, kneeling. So you see that the same language of worship that was invented by the Egyptians continue to exist in different religions today. And then on the left, you see a priestess dressed in a cloth and a dress with holes in it, like newt, offering with water offerings to the Nile. Water, or could be liquor. But here she is, the priestess, an Ethiopian priestess during the period of Yeha. Here's incense being offered by Ethiopian woman, and here's incense being offered in a Christian church. All of these things originated as a source of worship among the Egyptians. Water is purification, incense is purification. And then on the right, here you have Ramses' wife in her tomb. Now, it took me years of going back to royal tombs to discover something that was very, very obvious, but it was in plain sight, but I didn't make sense of it. If you go into the royal tombs, and the royal tombs are most attractive, they're very big, they're very beautiful stuff on them. But if you go into a royal tomb, if it's a king, there is nowhere, absolutely nowhere, that you will see any image of his wife or his children. Let's go into a female queen's tomb. There is absolutely nowhere you see any image of her children or her husband. So I didn't understand what this meant until I started going to private tombs. Well, private tombs, you see family, you see daily life. It's a whole different kind of experience. And I came to realize that the difference is this. In royal tombs, everything that's there, every formula that's on the wall is part of an overall conversation with eternity. In the private tombs, everything you see is more obvious. You don't have to know the glyphs to understand that it's a conversation with memory. Here's a harp that you find in Ethiopian and Egyptian artwork. And then you find here African Americans who have come to the conclusion that the ancient Egyptian religion is their sacred legacy. So these people, once a year or every other few years, they make pilgrimages to Egypt. And they go to the temples and they go to the different places and they try to commune with the place in a spiritual way. And here they are in Aswan heading towards the river, pre-sunrise. Now in Ethiopia, these churches, I say, that are separated from the rock, here's a better view of it. Back in the 13th century, the Christians went to the mountain and did a footprint of what they want the church to be. And then so they drew that out. On the other side of that perimeter, they then dug out a canal, a cavity in the mountain that was 40 feet around from the centerpiece of stone. And by digging it out, that center footprint became a column or became a stone, a vertical stone item. So then they turned around once they had finished, and as they were going down even, and they chiseled that piece of stone in the middle of all this into a church. So what you're looking at is living sculpture. And you enter from down below, so you can imagine when you go in at 4 a.m, it's dark, and when the sun comes up, you know it, and you know that's when it's time to go and work. I wish there was a way to cut off the sound so I could. Okay, and here's that red clay, that red, rich fertilizer soil that's coming out of Ethiopia on its way down to Egypt. That millennia, Egypt, and gave it 3 seasons. Here on the left, people who believe in nature and those who believe in Islam.
Yeah.
So, and these are temples inside of in Egypt and on the right in Sudan. Do you guys want to stop, or do you want me to?
Oh no, keep going. I am eating and you're feeding. Please. And I'm sure everyone is from the chat.
Yeah. Yeah,
If you
carry on,
want to
sir.
take a break, just
So,
let us know.
Yeah.
so this is interesting. On the left pyramids, those 60-degree angle pyramids in India, but on the right, that church in Ethiopia that they dug a rock, you saw the outside of it. Now here's the inside of it. Huge. There's no seats. People stand on. They use sticks underneath their shoulders to stand up during the long Orthodox service. But that's what those churches look like on the inside. The engineering is incredible. And here you have, well, this, I think, system. Okay, Egypt, the pyramids of Egypt, and then I say the inspiration for pyramids, the mountains in Simia and Ethiopia, the Simia Mountains, because you must remember that the people of Egypt are the cousins of Ethiopia. They just migrated down the river. And here you have two huge statues that must be about maybe 15 stories, 12 to 15 stories, that were in the old days in front of a wall of a temple, the temple of Tutankhamun's grandfather, Hotep III. We have the winds on the desert at overnight. And here you sunrise coming up through the temple gate in Nubia. So my pictures are beautiful, but they have information in them, and that was the whole thing. How do I take this information and package it in such that if you did what you were looking at in terms of information, you could still appreciate what was going on. This is a temple on the left. I'm on the right in Lalibela, tunnels that are connecting those churches, Hills of Pilgrim. Now, on the here is about the temple of the woman. I told you the woman was divine in Egypt. She had her own temples. She was a mother in the sky. Here you have in Ethiopia the temple of the woman, and the temple of the woman is in that temple, the altar is the bovine form of the udders. So in procession, the priestess and other women would throw them huge piece of wood, the bovine form, and they are possessed by the woman energy. And the Egyptians call that woman energy Hathor. And on this you see Hathor, the face of Hathor, as a woman. But what you also see is the they did an approach to the bovine form. Instead of in Ethiopia giving you the udders, they gave her in Egypt the ears of the cow. And here you have the king, the new drinking from the cow, and the cow skin representing the night sky, because they thought that that's where all wisdom was located, in the night sky. In the night sky, you have two things happening. You have the cow, and you have the stars of who's given us all. Here on the left are people who believe in nature, and with the sacred tree, the sycamore tree. The Egyptians also believed the sycamore tree was sacred. So here you have an early morning ceremony in Ethiopia, the people, the Oromo people. And in the right, you have a temple in Egypt with King Ramses in front of a sycamore tree. They thought that the sycamore tree was very, very... Now you look at here, it's 60-degree pyramid. So if it's 60 degrees, it's got to be in Nubia. And then you look through here on the right is in Ethiopia, looking out onto the valley of civilization, and you see the clouds cover. This is it's called Tamabur, and all the Egyptian temples had these twin gates in front. So when I saw that, I thought, well, this is inspiring. So it could have been the inspiration for the priests. Then you have on the left, women offering green grass with yellow to the nature tree. And on the right, you have a man in his tankwa, which is made out of papyrus, on Lake Tana at time. And it's time because I'm using the light of a full moon. And here you have the Muslims in Ethiopia on the left, and Christians, where they have these sacred caves all over Ethiopia. So here you have the Muslims in a sacred cave, and then in the daytime, and then at night, as you can see the stars up here, you have this priest in a sacred cave. So monasticism is something that the Ethiopians have been very much involved in, and until this day, you'll see it. But it comes from Egypt as well. Here you have the Jews, they call themselves Hebrews, not Jews. And then you have that tree, that sycamore tree again, people coming together. That sycamore tree is holy, but what makes it really holy is it must be near water. So here you have both those elements together. And the mythology behind it is that you had the battle between two brothers. You probably heard of Cain and Abel. Well, long before Cain and Abel, there was two other brothers who had a fight, and one killed the other one. And the sister of both of them decided to give that brother who was killed, she had a choice to leave it out and then be eaten by the hyenas or bury it. She buried it and planted a tree. And that tree is supposed to represent the connection between the ancestors and the living. Sunset in Aswan, a major temple to Amen in Nubia.
Hello, my elder. Can I just interject there? Can we just ask a few questions on there, because we're gonna keep going, and there's a lot there. So let's ask some questions, if you don't mind, sir.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna go, Nduku. The first question I'm gonna go, because I've obviously been studying for a while, and based on what you're telling us in terms of the history and how it's perverted, there are people in our community who can't seem to be able to handle the truth. And I was watching a video where you're talking about how you deal with human behavior. You talk about the 312s, the law of 312s. I kind of find that a bit, I need a bit more, if you can expand on that, because we in a situation where so many of us are on different conscious levels. Some get it, some don't get it.
Well, the 312s, first thing is about 12 feet away from you, watching how a person entered their space. Some people enter that space very timid. Some enter it very aggressive. Some enter very confident. And all of that says about that person, speaks about that person. And then the first 12 inches when the person actually arrives at you, how they smell. So because the body gives off its own signature. And then the next 12 is the first 12 words out of their mouth, which tells you how they string together a thought. Is there a thought about people? Is there a thought about ideas? Is there a thought, is it a lamentation? Is it a affirmation? Is it a declarative? All of these things people tell about themselves just by being themselves. And these are things that go unnoticed in most people because we just don't see it. And I didn't know it until I learned it from old people. See it as a marker that is revealing. So that's what that's about. But let me say, you touched on something about how people can't take the truth about this. Well, in this book, I've tried to look at every different religion that we African people have created. And I've tried not to be, and the religions that have been corrupted and distorted. And I've tried to present them as what they are without value judgment against each other. But I understand that I understand there's a problem with people. Is that, first of all, you're asking people to question the tradition of their parents. That's not an easy thing that most people can do. But more importantly, religion, as we know it, I say, this is only me, is death insurance. What do I mean by death insurance? Religion, since you've exposed yourself to it, and its teachings tells you that there is a place called heaven, which is probably, I would say, the first lotto. And that in order to get to heaven, you have to stock up and buy this, and you have to go 3 times a day, a week, and do that, and da da da. So it's an insurance policy in the end, and you hope that when you die, that insurance policy will allow you to make your transition to this better place that you've been having to suffer earth for this better place in the sky. So I call that death insurance. So people are very much reluctant to give up their policy for another policy that they have no proof. Well, but no religion can give you proof for an afterlife. We're in a world that is contained. There's no way out. But we're also in a world that is also always moving, so that one life form becomes another life form. And those life forms can be a whole lot of other things. We had no decision about how we got here. We will have no decision about how we leave. So the important thing is for you to be comfortable living the best you can. You know, isn't it interesting that Jews have no heaven? None, absolutely none. It's and the Egyptians who came up with this concept of a heaven was they didn't really call it a heaven, they call it an afterlife, and the afterlife will look just like you have here. But there is no better place, I think, by saying it here. They reinforce the fact that there's no better place than here. You are in heaven. So don't let something separate you from a good thing. Don't let fear and this lotto separate you from a good thing. And people find that some people can embrace that. Some people feel that it takes away the certainty of someone else having intervention on their transit through here. And some people think, wow, that's all there is, I thought it was more. Well, you've been sold a bill of goods that there's more. But what's important is here now. Live your life fully now. And, I asked my great uncles and my great aunt. My great uncle lived to die at 108, and his sister lived to die at 105. She was a midwife. And they would go and they would take the midnight shift with their dying friends. And as a young man, once I asked them, well, is there a difference? Do people die differently? And they said to me, yes. I said, well, what's the difference? They said, well, people who were honest with themselves, who lived fully, die peacefully. People who were not honest with themselves and hedged on their living died like someone drowning, reaching for any kind of thing to keep them above water. Your heaven is here. It's not, and then look, what has a white man done? He has come to the continent and he's convinced us that our heaven is in the sky, while he takes all of our land and he makes his heaven on the earth.
Yeah.
He himself, this is in religious thought, is not in his DNA. He himself tells you what the Egyptians said, do not steal, why he steals all. He himself, as the Egyptians say, do not murder, commit murder on a vast scale with his weapons and bombs, sabotaging everybody else. So we have to I know it's difficult for some people to question the source upon which we're getting our information, but we are not lost if you no longer want to be a Christian. You're not lost if you no longer want to be a Muslim. Don't turn away because you're anti that. Turn away because you realize that your relationship with the universe is personal. Your relationship with a God is crowd control. And you don't need that crowd control. If you lived in a place where you heard nothing about the Bible, nothing about the Torah, nothing about the Islam, and you die, uh, what did you miss? You only know that you suspect that you missed something once you buy into the language of whatever those books are about. But you don't need that.
Wow. Wow. Brilliant. Nduku, before you go, please, I just want to touch on something as you're talking there. The sacred sanctity of women. Why was that taken away from us, sir?
When the Torah was invented, the man emasculated the woman. You know, our ego is a very dangerous thing. And in men, that's the cause of all our wars, all our wasted treasure, because of men's egos. Because with the woman in power with the man, there was a balance. You still have that balance among the Ashantis. You have the queen mother and you have the king. The queen mother's job is to advise, one primary job is to advise on the rule of the women. And secondly, to look out for the women in anything that the king decided he wants to do as policy.
Mm.
But the male ego decided that it wanted to control the woman. And look what the Bible does now. It gave them the license to control her body. That's why the man has a license to say if she has an abortion or she has anything, it's his job to punish her. Look at the issue about raping. If a woman is raped, the man decides that the woman should be punished, but the rapist goes away free. So the Bible did a lot of things. It took away the divinity of the woman, it emasculated her, and it also determined that nature was dead. Instead of nature being something that is living and that's a part of us and we are part of it, now nature is dead and man has complete rule over it. So it is probably, we can say, one of the first cultural instruments of male domination.
One of the first cultural instruments of our destruction.
Well, that goes with that. That's what the history of the male ego has shown us.
Yeah. Wow.
That was the question I was going to ask, and thank you so much for speaking on it. But for me, born and raised Catholic, transferred at one point to born again, came back to Catholicism, and then I was like, yeah, this is bullshit. I'm gone. Y'all can enjoy your time there. Goodbye. And when I left, I had my children, and I said to them, because they were asking questions, and I said to them, listen, let's focus on how you're going to treat other people, right? Treat them the way you want to be treated. As long as you do those things, I think you're good. I honestly think as long as you do those things, you're good. None of us is perfect. All of us are always stepping on each other's toes. But when you do, acknowledging that, oops, I stepped on your toes, I'm sorry, and making sure that next time you don't, intentionally, actually. So those, just the basics. Here's my issue with religion. I mean, there are many issues, but here's one that, on top of this female thing, and let's talk about that actually some more. How can we, as a society, acknowledge and see the evidence that the woman is the one who's been given the task of nurturing life, of bringing life, of nurturing all of us, including the misogynistic men, and then turn around and say that she's the bottom of us all? How does that make logic? And how are you sitting and saying that that's okay?
Well,
Make it make sense, sir.
so you're saying what I've always said. How is it that the person who gives you life, who nurtures you,
Yeah.
who makes sure you don't die, and then you turn around and then you abuse her and say that she has no importance? This is a problem with the male ego. And this is also a problem with mothers. these mothers who say, oh, to the boy when he does something, oh, that's so cute. They need to beat that boy's ass when he does something that's against women. See, I grew up in a relationship of cousins, and there was only 2 boys and about 6 girls. And I guess they were all very strong and feminist because they will very quickly declare their value. What did you say? What do you mean?
Exactly.
So you had, and I think that's what's missing among women and mothers. Look, when a guy comes to you, I must say that most relationships of women, we all enter relationships with the best of intentions.
Mm-hmm.
But some of those intentions are very basic that we tend to overlook. I think women like to think that a man is attracted to her presentation, her clothes. Well, I'm here to tell you that's not what we're attracted to.
It's
And
good to know.
and then the quicker you understand that, then the quicker you then can pull his jacket and say, no, wait, no, this is not about. If this is about that, then there's other issues that one has to touch before that. And if that's what you need, then go down the corner, turn right, and the first girl you run into, that's the girl you're looking for. But it's not me. But the women seem to be reluctant to express their sense of worth because they have been conditioned that they are the vessels of original sin. There's no original sin in African religion. The original sin has been pounded and pounded into everybody, that Adam and Eve went wherever, and it takes 2 people to do something, but in this case, only Eve did it. She is the originator of original sin, and which then declares her persona non grata in terms of the world of divinity. That's absolute bullshit. So, and then you talk about Catholics, and then they try to cover their ass by wearing the cloak of a woman.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
They
Please.
wear the cloak of a woman, and then they give Mary, okay, you're the vessel, blah blah blah, But that's not, and then they use Mary as an Egyptian paradigm, the first impossible conception, 7,000 years before Jesus Christ was conceived, supposedly, without a father. The Egyptians had the concept of As and Asar. The Greeks called it Osiris.
Osiris Heru.
Heru. What is that concept? The concept is this: that the god that in the Egyptians, and that they have it on the wall, and you have it in my book. There was a king, Asar, who was an agronomist, and he was able to make the country flourish because he was able to teach them how to have 3 crops a year. He wanted to share this with the other parts of the world, and he took a leave from the throne in Egypt and left his wife in charge while he went around sharing with other people this scientific knowledge. While he was away, his jealous brother Set pulled a coup on his wife. When he got back, when Asar returned, Set figured out a way to have him murdered. And not only did he have him murdered, he had his body chopped up into 14 pieces and planted and buried in different parts of Egypt because he was afraid of his brother's magic or his ability with spirit to come back. The wife, who's been deposed, under house arrest, hears of this, and in much distraught, reach out to try to find these 14 pieces of her husband's body. After a year and finding all these, she takes all these pieces and she does a puzzle, and she puts them all back together, and she bandaged them up. This is the first mummy, but it doesn't stop there. Then she, with the help of the Holy Spirit, transformed herself into a bird representing spirit, spirit. And this bird hovers over where the penis should be of her dead husband. They couldn't find the penis, the 15th piece, because it was thrown into the river and they say eaten by an electric eel. She, through the help of the spirit, takes the seed of a dead man, her husband, and she becomes pregnant. That is the first record in history of impossible conception.
Yeah.
That's how the Mary story got. There is no theological concept that the mind can think of that did not come out of Egypt. None. No, absolutely none. Once you learn how to study the glyphs and study the information, you realize that what I'm saying to you is very humble. As I'm not trying to be, I don't take those kind of positions, but I've learned that anything that's theologically expressed had its birth in ancient Egyptian theology. So we have her now. She's pregnant, and what happens? She's a refugee in her own country. She is an outlaw in her own country. Her uncle and the government are looking for her. She's a royal woman. She has no skills. So what does she do? She goes and she starts selling vegetables in the market. And to keep any sort of suspicion about her, she leaves her son at home. At home is by the river. She makes a little basket made out of papyrus, and she puts the son in it, and she puts it in the reeds so that the water won't take it anywhere. And then when she comes back after work, she collects it, and her son begins to grow up. So you probably heard that story in the Bible. There again, there is nothing theological, no theological expression, none whatsoever, that did not come out of Egypt.
As you talk about the Adam bit, and this is just to open up our eyes and to have us critically analyze what we believe in, and that's all we are asking. We're asking you to take a pause. And for me, the importance in this, what we are standing by, is the fact that it is taking us from being fully who we are. And by that, I mean from defending ourselves from the continuous intention to harm and subjugate us. And that is the importance of myself, Oladele, Mzee Higgins, Mama Kanyisile, continuously telling you about our African spirituality. We're not proselytizing like religion does. We're telling you we used to have this way that brought peace to us, that had calm, that brought prosperity to us. Why don't we return to this way? We have adopted this way that has brought death, that has brought exploitation, that has brought subjugation. Can we leave it and go back to the way we used to have? That's all we're saying. But as you talk about Adam and Eve, and someone made a joke in here about it as I was thinking of the question, which is quite funny. It's interesting how similar we are in thought, everyone that is. That's the beginning of the man getting away with crime. That justifies men abusing women because they can say she dressed like that. She did this. That made me. That justifies Muslims saying that this woman must cover themselves because if they don't, I'm tempted. This man and his tempted self, like, do you not all realize that you're admitting your weakness?
I understand what you're saying, but this Bible, what they did is they invented male exceptionalism. The Egyptians had male and female exceptionalism. The Patriarch Bible threw away all of the woman exceptionalism and only left male exceptionalism. And that's what we're honoring. And let me say this. We have been dehumanized with this book. This book is one of pacification. It's not us. And you cannot have a picture of a black head of a white God in your house and respect a black head of that house.
Wow. Wow, that's deep mind control.
It's all psychological warfare. We don't know it. So therefore, we don't have a defense against it. We don't realize what's happening. And if you don't realize what's happening, you become, you're continually victimized by it. And you have to embrace your victimization. And that's what's happening. When these people say, when they reject their spirituality of their ancestors, they are embracing their victimization.
Wow.
And they get very, very wrought out about that. But they can't see that, and I don't know, and you can't really say that to them in that way.
No.
But but it's important to understand what you're looking at.
Yeah, because some people will say to you, being blasphemous, and you cannot say that against this and say that against that, and yeah, they get very touchy feely about this. And it's
And then I say, who said this to you?
Exactly.
And they would say God, and I would say, wait. And God spoke to you in which language? Why does God need a language to speak to you? Number one.
Wow.
And why is he not, or she, right? Because we don't. Why is this entity you call God not speaking to you in your own language when they know that's the language you speak?
Yeah. So it has to be. It has to be.
Why are you going to learn Arabic and English to speak to that God?
So you're telling me that your God is very limited.
Listen,
and
you
you
very
want
limited God.
Sorry, Undoku, I need to ask a question. Sharon Khan is asking a question there. So, my elder, she's asking, is it true that the Ethiopian Bible is the oldest, most and original Bible on earth?
The walls of Zimbabwe? Is that what she's asking?
Is that the Ethiopian Bible is the oldest, the
It's
most
the
complete?
oldest. It's the oldest African Bible because it came out of Constantinople in 324 AD. But that Bible is very fractured because Constantinople was able to do this and create a new version of the Bible because he killed off all of the bishops who believed in a more expansive view that incorporated nature. It was the very first propagandistic.
You want to grab some water, sir?
Very first propagandistic. He was trying to make his empire. So that's what the beginning was called, the Eastern Church and the Western Church. But still, both of those churches, which are a product of the Greek Church, they are anti-African. In fact, one could argue that Cleopatra VII, who was not Egyptian, who was Greek, a Macedonian, what she should be noted for is that she lost the kingdom with a fight. What Sheba should be noted for is she also lost the kingdom, but without a fight. She surrendered her country. Sheba surrendered her country to the land of Israel without a fight. Sheba, who believed in the gods of her fathers, which was nature, surrendered the country without a fight to Israel. So one could argue that it's not a good look for the women rulers who did this, but bad stuff happened, and we're left with that legacy today.
Yeah. There's
okay.
Okay,
yeah, sorry.
there's another one. Okay.
There's a question there. Somebody's just written there, sir. Is heaven? Somebody's just asking from the audience: is heaven and hell real? If
you
not,
have a heavy task for all humanity, Mr. Higgins. You have to tell us: is heaven and earth real? Please tell us.
so if not, where do we go when we leave Earth?
I have to answer that another way. So you're telling me that God, who can do all things, invented the devil to mess up everything?
Hey.
I find that, to me, that's problematic. Heaven is here in the time that you have. Hell is an invention in your mind. Like heaven has been taught to be an invention in your mind, because you're looking and thinking outside of yourself rather than being in yourself in the moment and appreciating the greatness of the moment. Let me tell you something. Can the Bible create air? Can the Bible make me breathe? Can the God the Bible talk about change the night sky for me? No. The most important thing when you wake up in the morning is you've been blessed 4 times. When you open your eyes, 1, 2. You've been breathing overnight, that's 3. And then 4, when you have voice and you move. Those are your blessings. That's heaven every day to you, people. I know you're a little disappointed, but no, you got to step back. You can't, if you didn't have the air to breathe, you would not live past a minute. If you did not have the water, which does not consume itself, to provide the nourishment for food, you would not live past a week. And if we did not have a sun overhead blazing, if it went out over a week, the whole planet would start freezing.
Mm.
So you are in heaven. You have to look at what's here, where you're at. You are already in heaven. Now, what you make of your heaven, it's like being in a house. You can dirty it up if you want to. You can drop shit all over the place. You can be junky. You can be trashy. Or you can be very neat and enjoy it and make it work for you. But this is all there is.
I think it goes back. I know you. I'm glad. I like when you say, I know you're disappointed, because that really was what hit me when I first started moving away from religion. It was painful. It was not an easy journey. And I was completely disappointed and I'm still processing that. Even to this day, every now and then I'll go and say, Lord, please help. I'm like, who the hell is this Lord I'm praying to? Like, I have to always catch myself because I have been conditioned, right? And I think what that question goes back to the death insurance and this idea of one life to live, and therefore people feel this fear of, oh my God, this is the only heaven I get to experience. My heaven was shitty, so they feel like they've been cheated out of heaven if you make them that this is the heaven.
It's shitty because they didn't take the responsibility to make it something that they could enjoy. And that gets back onto the Egyptian religion. The Egyptian religion, when they talk about the 10 Commandments, actually 42, they don't say a God is telling you thou shalt not kill.
Mm.
You take responsibility. I have not killed. I have not committed adultery. I'm not this. I'm not. You have taken responsibility for making your time pure, sacred, divine.
Sorry, my elders. Sorry, what you basically those are the declaration of innocence is what you call them. Yeah, carry on.
Which happens
I'm innocent of this transgression. I'm innocent of that one. Da da da. And so, if you look at all those transgressions that they're innocent of, you got a very pure person. That's why when you look at Egyptian statuary and paintings, there's something very strange here. These people look fully at peace.
Mm.
When they're living in their minds in a very peaceful way because they know reality is it, and they're dealing with reality. Look at the Europeans after the Egyptians came. They don't live in their heads. They live in their skin, in their egos.
Mm.
You can just look at it, because I'm trying now to look at how do you do a psychological profile of the culture by looking at what they left behind. And that's one of the things I came up with. There is a difference. What is the difference? They are there in their own space, and they don't care who's around them. Nothing's going to disturb that peace that they have. And there's nothing's going to disturb that understanding that gives them grounding. That we, outsiders separated by a distance of years and culture, can't help but envy and wish we could have it. What is it that it gives them this kind of peace? And here's King. It's a lot of busy stuff's happening. He's got to be very smart, but he's handling that smartness in a very cool, considerate, and confident manner. Now you look at the Greek and the Roman, their heads, they handle that in their ego, in their flesh. They're ready to chop off any kind of misunderstandings, rather than to have the courage to interrogate misunderstandings to come out with understanding. Our minds have been really fucked.
An understatement, that is. That's an understatement, but yes. So the other question, before we dive into the other one, because there are many questions. People are confronting their lifetime, I guess.
There's a lot there, man.
Hold on real quick. Yeah, let me ask a question before we go there. The doctrine of exploitation, you've talked about it before. Please talk a little bit about the doctrine of exploitation, because as we reclaim who we are and as we reclaim ownership of our motherland and the right to be without being interfered with, this is an important one.
Yeah, you can Google it. Doctrine of Discovery, issued by the Pope. And that doctrine, we're looking at it from there's two different sides to look at this.
Mm-hmm.
We have been a product of the how the doctrine has been carried out. Every brown person other than Europe have been subjugated and controlled by this doctrine. But the Europeans was looking at it as a way of bringing peace among their warring tribes. They have nothing but war in their blood. They have these 20 years wars, these 100-year wars, and nothing but wars. We don't have that as a history. People may have a small war, but they don't have these mass incarceration, what do they call it? Wars of mass destruction. That's a European thing. So the Pope says, look, all these children in Europe, they're bloodthirsty.
Yeah.
What can I do to distract them and bring peace to the bloodthirstiness? So he says, okay, I'm going to let the dogs out. Don't fight each other. Go fight the rest of the world and take it. So from their point of view, they, as predators, they were authorized from the Pope, from the Holy Father, that they would be blessed, that whatever they did was not going to be a sin. They would be forgiven for it because they're doing it in the name of the cross. That's how the Crusades happen. The doctrine of discovery.
And as you say, predators, it takes my mind to the movies, the predators. And you wonder why they always make the predator win, which is very interesting. But this statement you made, nothing but war in their blood. The difference between them in this way, and I'm getting to a point that will make sense in a minute, and maybe you can help me do that. The difference between them and African spirituality is that every time we participated in war and the taking of life and the spilling of human blood, we cleansed ourselves because we understood that it was against our way. It was against the agreement we have with each other and with existence, right? So you had to cleanse yourself because it was a huge wrong you had done, so that you don't carry the demons and the negative attachments that are associated with taking a human life. It's the same thing I've noticed with the indigenous peoples of these lands that they call the United States. To this day, when they take back the land that has been taken from them and they settle in it, before they start growing and settling in that land, they will have a ceremony to request the land for forgiveness and for the blood spilled in it, because the United States, the people who invaded it, spilled so much blood. So talk about that a little. And these people, again, the white invaders and colonizers and exploiters, never have that ceremony. So they're carrying on all these lives that they've taken and all this bad blood in them.
They're very traumatic people. The wars in Europe, before they got distracted, left this trauma, and they've taken that trauma with them wherever they go. And they cannot cleanse themselves. It never occurred to them that they should cleanse themselves of this trauma. Our people do the same thing when we look at nature before we take a tree. You make an offering before you chop the tree down. You make an offering before you kill an animal, because you're acknowledging that we are connected. And I'm your brother, and I'm your sister, and I need what you have been able to produce for use, blah, blah, blah. But this is first of all, spirituality is a foreign concept for white people. Name me one spiritual place in the ancient times of Europe. Name me one.
There isn't one.
There is one.
The only time I've seen spirituality for me, and I don't know whether I'm right, but tell me, I've seen it in the Gaelic community. But you go ahead, sir.
Stonehenge. Okay. Stonehenge is the only spiritual instrument that has been invented by white people. And that wasn't really about spirituality. It was about time. Knowing where you are in the seasons, which is what the Egyptians used astrology to invent, But any culture with astrologers would do that. But there's no spirituality. That's the closest thing they have. They have nothing that is buried, that we have discovered, that shows an understanding of their place in the world on a spiritual way. However, we are just loaded with that kind of information. So how dare they come up with a religion that is better than ours, and they have the right to dominate the world with it, and it's not anywhere in their DNA or history. But we Black people, we people who've been conquered, are so overwhelmed by them that we don't even question that. We just bow down because we've been convinced that by bowing down, we don't want to disrupt that because the white man has told us that we're gonna make it cross the river. Not told us that we're taking everything you got and you're gonna go across the river by yourself, if there is a river. Because I told you it's a lotto game. It doesn't exist. What exists is the perfection of now, perfection of reality. And that's enough. My God, that's enough.
And you say that, Oladile, do you see any questions? And you say that, and it reminds me every time I try to paint the picture to those I'm bringing in to build community with, of what we can do, what we can build, I'm always told, you're building a utopia. What is wrong with building a utopia? Why can't your mind imagine a utopia?
Well, I agree with you. I would go the other way. Why aren't you worth a utopia?
Why aren't you worth a utopia?
I say this: we can build whatever we set our mind to if we want to do it. If we intentionally do it, we can do anything.
If we feel we're worth it, we'll do it.
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
This thing they're calling a utopia is not depending on the government to provide electricity, not depending on the government to provide water, not depending on the transportation systems that are causing a lot of havoc, and getting back in touch with nature to grow your own food. That's the utopia, and where we are getting along and we learn how to deal with each other as far as conflict. That's all.
Okay, I've got one question here. I don't know if you can answer this one, my elder. I don't know if it's relevant, but it says, is it true that the King of England owns the IP of the Bible?
Who cares?
I'm not sure, but I think he should. It is his product. He paid for it.
But that goes back again, Mzee Higgins. That goes back to why is it your concern as a Mwana Ubuntu? And people tell me, Nduko, I have people telling me this all the time, Mzee Higgins. Stop leading with anger. What the hell do you want me to lead with when it's so frustrating that you don't get simple information?
Yeah. Okay, let's moving on.
No, don't go away from that. No,
Yeah.
no, Oladile. Do not go away from that at all.
Yeah. No, I'm just going to the next question. It's been answered. Yeah. Go on. Okay. The
point I would like Mzee Higgins to address is why we as Africans feel the need to worry about whether that man has ownership to the Bible.
Okay. Yeah.
Why
Go
do
on.
we feel that need?
Yeah. Go on. Answer that, sir.
Well, it is intellectual property. So my question though is, if the king owns the Bible, then what does God own?
Wow, I love that. Wow. Yeah, thank you, sir. Unduku, have you got anything else to add to that? Because I haven't. I haven't. Okay. What was I going to ask you, sir? I have a question here, sir. What was the inspiration behind you becoming a photographer and a historian?
One day, as the business manager for my college newspaper, I had hired this older photographer to make pictures because I wanted to make large ads. And I went to his house, and while he was processing these pictures for me, I saw behind a black cloak in the studio very dignified images of older Black men and women. And he tells me that during the Depression, farmers will come by his house on market day. And every now and then he would see what he calls a real exceptional character. and he would run off his porch, run up to them and beg them to come make a picture, let him make a picture in the studio with his big camera. And when they were hesitant, he would offer them money. And that made a difference because the people who were older, they didn't have an ego to feel that they didn't care about having that picture made. But by offering them money, he then increased the amount of money they had to go to the market with. So these pictures, when I saw them, reminded me of my great uncles and aunts, poor people, farmers. And I said, wow, growing up, I knew there were only two pictures on their walls. The first thing on their wall is very necessary, the farmer's almanac calendar. The second picture was the picture of Jesus Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane with the light beam coming down. So it made me think, wow, I like for my great aunt and uncles to have their picture on their wall. I knew that photography is very expensive, and in fact, white photographers wouldn't let black people come into their studio. So I told Mr. Polk what I wanted to do, and I said, I need to learn how to be a photographer to make these pictures. So it took me a year and a half to learn enough from Mr. Polk to get a camera that had a light meter, because that was on the verge of light meter, no light meter. In a year and a half, I went home with my camera to make pictures because I wanted to see the smile on their faces or the consideration on their faces when they saw that they were worthy enough to be on their wall.
Sorry.
That's why I spent a year and a half of my life learning how to pick up the camera. And that was it. And then gradually I come back and, the civil rights movement is going on. And then one day I travel with the students and we go to Montgomery to picket this politician called George Wallace. And when we come back, I'm amazed of the pictures that they show on television and in news. Instead of showing American citizens petitioning the government, what they showed was images of black children who as potential thugs, arsonists, and rapists. That taught me two things. That it's not the first time I've seen this, but we tend to learn how to ignore this, number one. Number two, it taught me that a photograph never lies about the photographer. If the photographer has hatred for you, that's what their picture is going to show. If the photographer has love for you, that's what that picture is going to show. So I realized that, hey, I had a choice. I could go and take a banner and pick it outside the WSFA television station or the Montgomery Advertiser saying you're a racist, or accept the fact that these people just can't see because their hearts, as you see in Southern Baptists, their hearts may be full of scripture. I mean, their mouths may be full of scripture, but their hearts are full of hate. So I took it upon myself that I'm on the inside. Let me make pictures that other people can't see. So then I had to start learning more. I had to go to New York and find a teacher who could teach me how to make compelling imageries that were worthy of my people. All of my effort had been because I think my people have a certain worth in them. Now, a lot of us don't think we have that worth, especially when people dehumanize each other by calling them nigger. But hey, you have to reach who you can reach. As a biblical expression, you throw the seeds out and some will germinate and take root and some won't. But you have to make an effort. So when a person who've decided that they have no worth and they call themselves a nigger, I know that that person is lost. I know that maybe that person, it may be irredeemable, but that's not my problem. My problem is trying to reach the people who are trying to make a decision and who doubt the correctness of the nigger and who feel that they are worthy and they have the potential to be great in this time, not wait for the time to die. So that's what made me pick up the camera.
I'm so glad you mentioned the N word because I was recently speaking to a brother who is trying to explain the okayness of using the N-word. And because there's this most ridiculous campaign or argument that is going on, hold on, let me just mute our brother real quick, that is going on between these two rap artists of whether one can use the N-word and the other cannot use the N-word, right? And I'm trying to explain to these people, don't use it at all. You are literally insulting your ancestors by using it. It was used to bring Ma'afa on them. I don't care how cool you make it sound. I don't care how many A's are in the end or R's are in the end. It will never be a good thing. So please speak to that, Mr. Higgins, and the harm so that they understand, because that's the whole point. It's not about me being right. It's not about us being right and you following what we are doing. It's about you understanding what harm you continue to bring to our community as a collective. If we are operating on Ubuntu, what you do concerns me because I know it's continuing to harm the collective.
When I was a child, my grandmother, we lived on a street where farmers would come in with their cotton, bales of cotton loaded down on their wagons to go to the cotton gin. And when they're going in with fully loaded, you can hardly hear them, the creak, because they're so heavy loaded. And when they come back empty, you can hear them before you see them. They're just making all kinds of racket. And my grandmother looks at me, she says, an empty wagon makes a lot of noise. I say that about rappers. An empty wagon makes a lot of noise. Don't attribute them with having more than this noise. People ask me what I think about hip hop music. I said, that's not music, that's noise. Call it for what it is. I mean, I'm not telling you don't love it. You know, that's the only thing you've been growing up with. But hey, that's unfortunate. But know the truth too. Some people see it as noise. That's what it is. And if it's noise, then I also see it as an empty head. And the people who are doing that, their minds are on vacation.
Okay. Just to round up, because of time, we've been on here for about an hour and 42 minutes. Our last host was Professor James Small, who you know. Okay. He left a question for you to answer for us, sir. And if you don't mind answering the question as well as leaving a question for our next guest. So the question he left for us is, to be African or not at all? What's your response to this statement by Dr. Asa Hilliard? To be African or not at all, or not to be at all?
Well, you know, I answered it in this way. Grand Marshal James Small, I have a great deal of respect for him. But, you know, I said earlier that I lived 2 summers in Ghana. And one of my Ghanaian friends, as I was leaving one year, says to me, he says, you know, you consider yourself an African American or an African? I said, well, I really consider myself at the time an African American. I've since changed my mind. I'm a Western born African. And he said to me, well, you know what the definition of African American is to me? I said, no. It's an African without memory and an American without rights.
Ooh, wow. Wow.
You said it better than I was going to say it, because my argument so far has been, why are you, who comes from this continent or this place that is being abused by America, associating yourself with America? But you said it better than I could. Thank you. So
Okay,
that's
sir.
African without memory and American without rights. An African American is an African without memory.
Can you put that on the chat,
please?
And
an American without rights. Yes, let me do
please.
that.
Let's put that on the chat. Okay, sir. Just to put it out there, you're gonna come back because there's a lot to ask you. So if you don't mind, yeah, we're gonna invite you back. So if you don't mind, can you? Yeah, can we ask you a question for our next guest, please? What would you like to ask our next ask our next guest? What question would you like to leave?
You're talking to me or somebody else?
Yeah, I'm talking to you, sir. What question would you like to leave for our next guest, please, if you don't mind? Was it What would you like to ask our next
all the way, Phil Marshall, James Small, not for me. I don't really know what question to ask because I don't know what they're dealing with. But I guess the bottom line is not so much about how do we free ourselves. I think all of these issues will come to head once we can agree upon worthiness.
Yes.
Because once you agree upon worthiness, then you develop means of either making that worthiness excellent, and you develop means of protecting it.
I agree.
But the only way to deal with any of those issues that matter is that you have to come to a sense of worth. What am I worth? What are my people worth? And if you notice, this is because I lived in Ghana in the 70s, but on my interviews in America, I talk about my people. I claim them. I said, this is about my people. This is how I see my people. I claim my people because African Americans are so skittish and afraid of unity and worth. So it's a revolutionary statement to have unity, to feel that my brother is part of me, my tribe is part of me. So I very specifically talk about my people. So I'm sure it's the first time I've ever heard that expression coming from a Black American, talking about my people, talking about them as my people. Yeah, I know my people are not perfect, but they're still my people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done. And I care because they are my people and I'm a part of them.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for that.
Wait, did Mr. Higgins give us a question? Did I miss it?
Yeah, he gave it a question. The question basically is, how do we sense
How much?
personal...
how much? How much are you worth?
Ooh. Ooh.
What's your sense of worthiness? How do you protect it?
Well, the question though is how
much are you worth?
How much are you worth?
Okay, how much are you worth? Perfect. Wow, that's deep. We worth.
Because that determines what you do.
Wow.
Answering that question.
For the community, do not wait for us to ask this of the next guest. Take it home with you today as the thing to sit with. Go sit with that question. How much are you worth? Those of you who are fighting to defend these structures that you clearly seeing are doing harm to humanity, to human life, ask yourself, and especially to people who look at you, because that goes into the how much are you worth, right? Are you worth what you see them doing to you? Ask yourself how much you're worth.
And you know, and it's okay when people do whatever they do. You have the right, since you're worthy, to say, well, what's your problem?
Okay, I'm gonna ask this question, sir. Somebody just put a question here. Person says, would this quote apply to African born in the diaspora, such as Haiti or Jamaica?
Wait, what's the difference?
It applies to all African people, whether they're born on the continent or whether they're born in the Western Hemisphere.
Thank you very much.
Is it John Henry Clark who asks, what slave boat did you come out of?
Yeah.
Like, where did they come from? The boats. Where did all the boats come from?
Right. 36,000 of them. And if you ever go to Montgomery, you have to go to the Legacy Museum that has the best accounting of all of this. But your self and collective worth determines how you spend your life, determines how you make your heaven.
I'm gonna sneak in.
I want to die. I want to die with memories, not with dreams.
Oh, child, Jesus Christ! Which means you fulfilled your dreams. Oh, child! Oh, child! I am loving the lengths you're taking our minds to, because our people are afraid to let their minds wander into the possibilities of their power of thinking. Yes. So thank you for stretching our minds to wander into those possibilities that we've been told they should never venture into. I'm sneaking in a last minute question.
Okay.
Montgomery Legacy Museum, you said, and you being Amwana Ubuntu, an African, they call us, but Amwana Ubuntu because you're a child of the Ubuntu community, and that you speak through your pictures. You represent your vision of your people through your pictures. What is your thought of, and I don't know if this is even important, because this space might not even be for us. What is your thought of the African American history and God, I forget that name, museum in DC?
Yeah. That's good. But it's scratching a surface of white influence on us.
Wow.
So I tell people, fine, do that. There are many ways to reach consciousness. That's a beginning. Go ahead, do that. But where I want you to be, where I challenge you to be, is that slavery is not our history.
Exactly.
Slavery is an evil interruption of our history. Our history, our glorious history of sacred agency, began before Genesis and before slavery. So do that other stuff, but then once you prepared yourself to accept, because to me that's a crooked kind of worthiness. Because what you're crying out by saying, well, look what they did to me. Well, excuse me? Did you expect these people to have any other kind of way of dealing with folks? They have a history of doing this. We just happen to be one of the casualties. But that's not the end. What they did to us. What do we do for ourselves that's greater than that? Because we need imagination. We need something greater to pull us out of this shit. Being consumed with what the fuck they did to us is not going to free you. So, okay, if you want to hold your hands and say, oh my God, oh yeah, I did this, and people were suffering. Look, I'm not a victim. I don't believe in victimology. A victim is a person who cannot help themselves. They need to go to the hospital for somebody else to help them. I don't believe in victimology, like I don't believe in believing. I believe in knowing. And I believe that we have, some of us somewhere, have the mental ability to start drawing together all kinds of pieces that can reform us.
Yes.
That's what I believe in. I believe in that future. Yes, the slavery stuff, that speaks to our sense of worth and through the vice of how we have been mishandled and misdealt with. But that's not okay, fine. But lamentations have its place.
Yes. But in our culture, we remembered the what was the harm that we encountered so that we could avoid it, but we most definitely did not remember it in place of the successes. And that's the thing. We can remember our ancestors and honor them for the ma'afa that they went through and sit with them. But also we cannot make that or allow for that to be made our beginning. We have to go back. And that is the failure I find in that museum. But even more, because that's what they do. We know that's what they do. We can leave them there. But the thing that pains me more is that we celebrate it as a community, as an achievement when it's not. And that's what I'm getting at. Anyone who starts your history at slavery is not for you. Anyone.
You're right.
Wow. Yeah, you are. That's deep. Okay, my elder. Just to round this up, sir. If people want to contact you, if you want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you? How can they get hold of your books? And if you want to just share, I know we put the website out there, but just speak to the people if they want to reach out to you and stuff. Yeah. We've done that already.
On the website, there's a contact as well as the ability to buy books. So you can please write me and share your thoughts and strategize about how do we know we're in shit, but let's strategize. We need solutions. How do we get out of this shit?
Yes.
We know education is very important. We know finance is very important. We know science is very important. We have to do an accounting of our skills and also a strategy of how to put those skills to work.
I will most definitely be sending you an email because we're working on something that addresses that statement you just made. My question to the community is, if you were given the chance to build Nkrumah's vision and not wait for the current leaders of Africa to do it, would you jump on and do it? That's my question to you all.
Great question. Go on, sir. You want to say something to that?
Well, nothing is wrong with Africa but mismanagement. That's the only thing wrong with Africa, mismanagement.
Yeah, unfortunately. Reflections.
If we can solve the mismanagement problem, I mean, there are many problems, but that problem has to be solved.
Someone is looking to add to the tasks that you will be taking on in this lifetime, this physical lifetime. Apparently, there's a yarn for you to organize group tours to Kemet. So I don't know how you want to. You know what? I'm not going to blame them because as you were speaking, I was like, wow, that would be a wonderful experience to go there with him. To
Well,
see
you
it
know,
through his eyes.
I've never did tours, but there is somebody who does tours that if I was going to do one, I would go with Anthony Browder.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
Anthony is the person that you should go for a tour with. Yeah, as a photographer, I can't really work with a lot of people. I have to work by myself. I go and I hire a car, a driver, and a fixer, and I have a schedule, and I go. And I am one of those people with photography. I have to shoot sunrise. My shooting time starts with sunrise to maybe 9:30, and then I do interiors, and then I go back for exteriors an hour and a half before sunset. So, and I'm always negotiating access for stuff. So I can't. It's a different head. I can't lead people and do what I do.
Yeah, can you imagine sitting there and saying we're waking up at 4 and someone's like 4 is too early. No, all that too much noise.
Right. And people also get attracted to the creature comforts, and a lot of what I did it was out of tents in the desert. So with scorpions and snakes. So I can't ask. I just don't. I can't do that. I cannot service my work and service people too. But I can give them the pictures, what becomes their roadmap, that they can go themselves and they can see that what I photographed, they can find out the location where it is, and they can see it as well. So in the book, Sacred Nile gives you the visual evidence that supports all of this that we're talking about.
Wow.
So you all who are asking that question, sacrednile.com. That is where you will find Mzee Higgins' guide to Kemet. He will literally, virtually take you for that trip. So take the book and follow his images in the book and find those places that you can go to. There, you just answered their question. That's it.
Brilliant. Okay. Go on, sir. Go on.
I've had people write me and say, I just took your book and I did the tour of Ethiopia and Egypt, according to the book. And before the war started in Sudan, some people did Sudan. But, that way, because there's so much stuff there, but all of it is not relevant to what you need to know and what we're talking about as a divinity. But I pinpointed what is relevant. And also give you in the book a bibliography of what is relevant to what I'm talking about, so that you become armed. See, I could say this, I could write it out as a college professor, and I wanted to be boring, but 2 is words. But as a photographer, I want people to have the visual evidence, so they can point to somebody. They can say, well, look, this is this is that. See, the captions tell you. You see the different years that I went there, and that's part of the caption. But it's all evidentiary. So you don't have to, it's not about wishing that our people did something such and such. It's about the evidence left behind that our people did and the greatness of our people.
How
And if
much
they
is
can,
the book?
no, go ahead.
How much is the book?
The book is $50, but on Amazon it's for $36. On my website, I think it's also $35 on sacrednile.com. So you can go to either place, but it's discounted in the 30s.
So you can imagine all who take that 5,000 trip to Egypt, that you're getting that. So a percentage of that, maybe $1,000 is what you pay for that guide, is coming to you at $35. This is the value. I'm just talking about the value of the book.
Mhm.
It's the
And,
literary
and
name of the guide.
then you're in a position to tell the guide, I want to see this. I want to see
Yeah.
that. And then
Brilliant.
you got it.
Yeah. Perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, guys. Time is fast spent. Our elder, we appreciate your time with us.
Very much so.
We're definitely going to get you back because there's a lot more to share. There's so many questions I know Undugu wants to throw at you.
We're
I've
looking
got-
forward to connecting you with Mama Kanyisile. She's in
Yeah.
South Africa, and she has written a book that we are helping her put out on the topic of African women and reclaiming our position in our African spirituality. So I will looking forward to connecting you with her.
Yeah, we'd love you to work with her to actually get the message out there because she's like in tune, just like you are, sir.
Perfect.
Okay, our brothers and sisters on the Alkebulan. Unuka, you want to say something before I finish off?
No, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for your sharing the knowledge. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Our brothers and sisters on the Alkebulan, in the diaspora, wherever you are, our brother, our father, our uncle, our elder has shared knowledge. We are our own solutions. Slavery is not a history. It was just interrupted.
How
Evil.
much
exist-
is
Evil interruption. It's an interruption of evil.
We existed before, and we are still here now. Keep learning, keep learning. You know, it's endless what you discover if you're on the path of truth and discovery. Thanks for your time, everybody, and we'll see you in about 2 or 3 weeks' time for the next one. Thank you.
Kwaherini.
If you could,
Mr.
thank you very
Higgins, you
much.
can stay.